Welcome to the God Academy podcast. Hi everybody, and I want to start this 2019 second Israeli election special with a quote from our dear leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. A weak left-wing secular government backed up by the Arabs who want to annihilate us all, women, children, and men, will allow the Iranians to get a nuclear weapon that would destroy all of us. This is, in a nutshell, Benjamin Netanyahu's message to the voters, which he has spread through his Facebook chatbot. The Arabs, 21% of Israeli citizens, want to annihilate us all with their accomplices, the left-wingers, and the Iranians, who also want to annihilate us all. Welcome to the 2019 second Israeli elections. The elections that will determine if Benjamin Netanyahu stands on trial for fraud, corruption, and bribery, or gets to go back to the Prime Minister office and continue and finish his systematic dismantling of the Israeli state as we know it. This is what these elections are about. This is what is at stake. When I think about these elections, I feel that I have to brace myself because chaos is coming. We have a parliamentary system. He needs his allies to get more than 60 seats out of the 120 seats. He needs 61. 61, not that support him ideologically. No, that's not the thing. He needs 61 that support giving him immunity from prosecution. Those 61 seats, if he gets them in Tuesday's elections, September 17th, will have to include, in order for him to get there, past that finish line, at least 4 KKK-like extreme right Jewish politicians, pro-Jewish terrorism politicians, the head of which has a photo of a Jewish terrorist that massacred 25, I think, Muslim mosque goers in 1995. I think that was Baruch Goldstein. He has his picture, and that same person, a month before Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by an extreme right-wing zealot, that guy, Itamar Ben-Gvir, got to Rabin's car in a impromptu demonstration against the peace talks and snatched the logo of the car, the emblem of the car, and then said on camera, if we got to his car, we can get to him. For Bibi to be able to form a new government, he will need the support of this guy. And according to the latest polls, it looks like that's a definite possibility. So this is where we're at. Almost all of the scenarios are either extremely negative or the best case scenarios are somewhat negative. There are basically two options, two basic scenarios, and with sub-scenarios to them. I'm going to lay them out. If you're catching this on the podcast, I'm going to post the full podcast on our Patreon page. You can go to patreon.com/GotAcademy or just click the link in the podcast description. So this is going to be an abbreviated Israeli elections breakdown for everybody, and you can go on Patreon and get the whole thing there. This election is about whether Bibi can change the rules in order to stop the looming indictments which are coming in October. He will stop at nothing. For example, in the past few weeks, on top of saying that Arabs in general, citizens of Israel, not the Iranians, not the Palestinians, but Arabs in general, want to annihilate us all, men, women, and children. This is one example. Another example, he has tried to disrupt this election by putting forward a bill that will allow his Likud goons to come up with cameras in ballot stations, in polling stations all over the country. obviously going to Arab and left-wing polling stations with their cameras and trying to disrupt the vote. Thankfully, that didn't work, because if that bill would have passed and gone into law, then we would have become a banana republic / failed state that cannot hold elections, like elections in Afghanistan when you got violence that prevents people from voting. So Bibi tried to push this narrative of the Arabs are stealing the elections. I think that he wanted to pass the law, the camera law, in order to have quote-unquote proof, by creating and manufacturing proof and manufacturing a reality that he will be able to point to later and say, you see, the Arabs are stealing the elections. And even though he didn't get that vote passed, that bill, the camera bill passed, he's still pushing that narrative very, very, very hard. And I'm genuinely scared that these elections will not go smoothly, and that he's now preparing a pretext either to pressure, in the good case scenario, he's preparing a pretext to pressure his rivals within the party to not try and replace him if he can't form a government, by telling them, no, they stole the elections, the Arabs stole the elections. Of course, there are no serious, credible data and information about any election fraud, and when there is, it's mostly in polling stations where magically the Likud got like 60% in polling stations where in the past they only got like 20%, when there was missing someone from the opposition parties to be there in the polling station and make sure that everything is on the up and up. So in the good case scenario, he will use this the Arabs are stealing the elections narrative to pressure his allies / adversaries within the party to keep them down. The worst case scenario is that he will use this Arabs are stealing the election narrative in order to steal the elections, in order to undermine our faith in the election results, and thus staying in power, keeping power. Because if nothing changes, nothing happens, he stays in power. And as long as he is in power, he will not go to jail. That's a very, very scary thought for me. He has said that the Iran Supreme Leader Rouhani has expressed support for his rival. There is nothing he will not do or say to get out of jail. Because if he is not prime minister, for him the future is very bleak. Very bleak. Probably prison. There's a lot of evidence against him. A lot of his former workers and longtime allies are testifying against him. They're cooperating with the police. There are text messages between him and his wife and other accused in corruptions and other people who are cooperating. There's a mountain of evidence. And there's another reason why he has all these parties, other parties in his immunity coalition that want to support him. A lot of them are also facing charges of bribery and corruption. So they're like, okay, we'll give you immunity, and basically it's not that they're just thinking we'll give you Bibi immunity, we'll also give ourselves immunity. Both heads of the ultra-Orthodox parties are facing corruption charges in one form or another. They'll be happy to have an immunity clause where they can be prosecuted. So we'll have a coalition of felons. That's nice. So he needs to get immunity. And just for the basic context of how all this is possible, I'm always saying that we have to understand why so many Israelis are right-wing. It's easy to condescend and scoff at them and scold them, and also that might be the correct way to go, but just to understand them. If people in Iowa, in Ohio, in Wyoming are voting for a New York billionaire because he scared them of Mexicans whom they've never seen and who are thousands of miles away, Mexicans who have not carried out hundreds of terrorist attacks, and they don't have Mexicans who don't have a 100-year history of continuous bloody conflict with Americans, if he got those people scared into voting for him, how hard is it, do you think, to scare people from Arabs whom we have a conflict with, we have wars with, we have missiles that they are firing at us? Of course, this is a complicated issue, but this is like the basic framing. We have terrorist attacks, not so much anymore. We have rockets, especially in the south. We are fighting against the Arabs. It's very easy to be scared of the Arabs and thinking, okay, we gotta stand up for ourselves. So frankly, I'm kind of always in shock that the right wing isn't stronger here in Israel after 100 years and more of conflict between Jews and Arabs. So the election it's coming Tuesday, which when you're listening to this should be tomorrow. Tomorrow, whether Bibi can form a coalition, an immunity coalition. This is the reason we're going to this election, second election in 2019. The first election, he couldn't form a coalition because his number one demand, even though he denies it, is that he gets immunity. So his options are very limited. He can only form a coalition with other politicians who are willing to give him immunity from prosecution. So that means basically it's a coalition of the Likud, which is a right-wing to extreme right-wing party, mostly secular. He has to form a coalition in the Likud with the religious parties, the two ultra-Orthodox parties, and the racist, extreme right-wing, borderline Nazi parties. I don't know why I mess around with the borderline. Again, there's this pro-terrorism party and the other right-wing party whose head said all of the Palestinian people are our enemies, including women and children, and in war you have to kill your enemies. So how is that different than being I don't know. Basically, for me, that's like pro-genocide propaganda. Ayelet Shaked wrote that on Facebook. So in order for Bibi to come out victorious on election day, he needs forces that hate everything that this country is about to have more than 61 seats. If that happens, then it's hard to explain the consequences. It's hard to explain the consequences. In Tel Aviv, the turnout is going to be low. In the Arab population, probably the turnout is going to be low. Ultra-Orthodox always turn out in droves. Settlers and pro-settlers always turn out in droves. Crazy racist people turn out in droves. So if he has that coalition, then for me on Wednesday, I'm starting to think about plan B, where to live. Because this is going to be, for me, the most extreme right-wing government in the Western world. The most extreme. Brazil, Hungary, the Trump administration, Boris Johnson, come on. We will have a coalition with a guy who, for all intents and purposes, is going to assume that he got a mandate to dismantle the judicial system, to destroy the police, to dismantle the free media. All things that he has been working on. But this will be the final stamp of approval a month before he gets indicted. He was going to fire all the people who want to put him on trial and just say, okay, now I've decided that I'm not on trial. The people have voted. The people have spoken. And all his allies, they don't really care about giving him immunity. They're just using the fact that he has no options but to cooperate with them because no one else will give him immunity. And they will demand, okay, you want us to give you immunity from prosecution? Okay. We want to annex the West Bank. We want to turn it into a de facto apartheid state because now the West Bank is not officially part of Israel. It's under military rule. And the extreme right, they want to annex the whole thing, the full, complete land of Israel. Obviously, the only people who will get rights in those territories that will be annexed will be Jews, not the Palestinians. So it's going to be like 500,000 Jews and 2.5 to 3 million Palestinians who are not equal citizens not de facto, because you can say that the Arabs here in Israel, citizens of Israel, are not de facto equal citizens because of redlining and all kinds of systematic racism that you might know from where you live in. But it will be de jure apartheid. So that's where they're aiming, and they're using Bibi's weakness and the urgent need that he has not to go to jail in order to get what they want through, stuff that most people here don't want. So this is an existential threat to Israel. And if that coalition emerges victorious, for me it's the first day of thinking of Plan B. Where should I live? Where should I leave to? I'm not even kidding. I don't want to talk about it too much because it gets me depressed. This is one scenario. This is the worst case scenario. More than 61 seats, 61 and above, to this crazy right-wing, pro-immunity, pro-apartheid, pro-fascist coalition. Basically a coalition of Islamic jihadists and Hamas, just Jews. The second to worst case scenario, and the most plausible scenario in terms of the polls that we've seen in the past few weeks and months. No one gets a clear majority, and we are in a constitutional crisis. During this constitutional crisis, Netanyahu, Bibi, is still prime minister. His government, even though a government needs to be approved by the parliament, by the Knesset, this government has not been approved. This has been approved by the former Knesset that has been dissolved, so basically it has no legitimacy to do anything. It's a transition government. It's a post-transition government even. No one has a clear majority. My guess is that Bibi will start to unilaterally do power grabs and change the situation, the geopolitical situation, the political and the judicial and the constitutional situation, while there are negotiations to set up a coalition. For example, my guess, he could start a conflict with Gaza and then say to all his rivals in the media, "Are you attacking the Israeli prime minister while we have a war with Arab terrorists? Are you working with the terrorists? Do you hate Israel so much that you will work with the terrorists to undermine Israel's security?" Very easy. Very, very, very easy. You can say this is an emergency situation. I'm going to call an emergency powers to protect ourselves from the terrorists. And there will be an actual conflict and war, and missiles will fall, and everybody will have to fall in line and say, okay, maybe this is not a time to replace the prime minister, blah, 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 blah. This is the second to worst scenario. Prolonged period without a coalition, without a government, while all the various parties is trying to... Because Bibi knows if he doesn't have the 61 crazies, then he doesn't have any other option. No one of the other political players trusts him and wants him to stay a prime minister, even the right-wing ones. There is a crazy racist right-wing party. The head of this party, Avigdor Lieberman, he just wants Bibi to go out of the political life. Wants him to go to jail. Bibi has a lot of rivals within the Likud. They're just scaredy cats and they don't say anything. They're waiting for the day after to replace him, or they're waiting for a stalemate and they think that they'll be positioned well enough to replace him. So let me stop here for the public version of this special election podcast. And if you want to get the good scenarios, the better scenarios, then you can click the link in the description or go to patreon.com/GotAcademy. I'll post the whole thing over there. And I'll post another one after the elections, probably on Thursday, to tell you all about the results, what they mean. And again, I'll post a shortened version here on the podcast and a full version on the Patreon page, on the God Academy Patreon page. So patreon.com/GodAcademy. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you all on Tuesday. Bye everybody. except the patrons. I hope you're still here. Okay, so to recap, worst case scenario, Bibi's extreme right / Nazi KKK coalition gets a majority of the seats. He becomes a sheikh. He becomes a Mubarak Gaddafi style leader here. Dismantles the state, dismantles the political system. He already basically de facto drained the parliament of his powers, but he will do so also for the judicial system. He wants to pass laws that will forbid the Supreme Court from challenging any bill, any law that the parliament passed, because he wants them to not strike down the immunity law that he wants to pass. So in order for him not to go to jail, he will change our system from a struggling democracy into an autocratic one-person strongman state that is leaning and basing his powers on pro-terrorism politicians. Just worst case scenario. Second to worst case scenario, no clear winner, nobody can form a coalition. Bibi changes the rules during the negotiations when he knows that he doesn't have enough votes to get an immunity coalition, and then scares everybody else to fall in line, or changes the rules midway because we're at war. We're at war. For you American listeners, you had that shit going on during the Iraq war. Okay, slightly better scenario is, again, no clear winner, prolonged negotiations, nobody can form a coalition. We go to another election, third round of election. And Bibi stays prime minister during that time, so he can try and change the rules during that time. And he's been so awful in the first 2019 election, but he's been way worse in the second 2019 elections. So if there's another election, maybe it will be January 2020, he will be even worse. Even worse. The camera bill that he didn't get passed, I don't know. Maybe he will just do it without a bill. The thing is, with Bibi, we have to understand that we all have lives, we have a job to do, we have to raise our children, we have to eat, we have friends and stuff, but he spends 24 hours a day on thinking on creative ways not to go to jail. How can I dismantle and destroy the powers of the state using the levers of power that I have in order to change the rules of the game so that they will not be able to put me on trial? He is very creative in that. This is like Boris Johnson and Brexit when he came up with this is a prorogation. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Suspending Parliament so Parliament won't be able to stop his hard Brexit plan. So if this happens in Britain, the cradle or so-called cradle of democracy, with all its powerful institutions and its powerful traditions, if this almost succeeds there, with the same kind of rhetoric and thinking, how are we supposed, Israel, whose majority population are traumatized Jews who have 2,000 years worth of trauma in their psyche, and the Holocaust 70 some odd years ago, and all the wars and the terrorist attacks, how are we supposed to stop this extreme right-wing anti-democratic wave? No. So a third election, wow, that would be just horrible. People are so tired of this election, they'll be even more tired of the next election. Bibi, he will not be tired. He will be somewhat happy if this happens, because this means that he will not go to jail yet. Probably get to postpone his indictment in October, but be able to postpone it because you can't. This is interfering with the elections. Come on. Again, because he has very limited options. He has to have supporters that support the immunity that he covets. So third election, that's like the third worst case scenario. Now we get to the better scenarios. And honestly, this is a little bit hard for me to expand about because it forces me to visualize a hopeful scenario. And Israeli left-wingers, we have been working really, really hard to not hope anymore because we have had our souls crushed for so long. And in 2015, we have learned our lessons. All the polls showed that Bibi was going down. And then not only he didn't go down, but he became stronger. So it's very hard to hope. So maybe I'm going to go by it quickly because I already feel myself getting emotional. So a good scenario. Bibi doesn't have a coalition. Nobody has a coalition. The president, that's a ceremonial position whose most important duty, official democratic duty and power, is to decide who gets first crack to try and form a coalition. And he can also become active in the creation of this coalition. Our president is a true 100% classic liberal. Not the classic liberal jokes that are on YouTube. A real, honest-to-God, classical liberal. He wants his vision for Israel is a one state for everybody where it's a Jewish state, but everybody got equal rights. Of course, you can say that I will say that this is not realistic, but he's at his core a genuinely good guy. Doesn't have a racist bone in his body. He has been speaking against Israeli racism against Arabs ad nauseum. He has been speaking against the anti-democratic tendencies of the right ad nauseum. And of course, he's been labeled as left-wing by Bibi and his goons. And he hates Bibi. They have a personal beef, personal and ideological beef. They are nemesi to each other. I'm positive, even though he will not say it. The president, Rubi Rivlin, does not want Bibi to be the prime minister. If he has a chance to broker a deal, a coalition that will not have Bibi in it, he will do it. He said, I will do anything and everything so we will not go to a third straight general elections. So, if there's a stalemate, nobody has a coalition, Rubi Rivlin will approach other leaders in the Likud who also despise Bibi and who want to replace him, want him gone. They don't like all this craziness. And he will try to form a unity government between the Likud and the rivals, center left, center right, whatever you want to call them, a party of generals, ex-generals, and form a unity government without Bibi. Bibi's rivals, the Likud's rivals, say, this is our goal, a secular unity government, us and the Likud without Bibi. This might be the most plausible and realistic good scenario out there. A rightish coalition, secular rightish coalition or secular right coalition without Bibi. And about this, famed Israeli author, recently deceased, Amos Oz, he said in 1999, the last time that Bibi lost, he said that after he lost, it felt as if he had like an old-fashioned motor outside his bedroom window, constantly huffing and puffing, brrr, brrr. And then it suddenly stopped, and you're like, oh, whoa, quiet. Just like you can feel the quiet. This would be like the first and immediately felt effect of Bibi getting out of political life. It's just like quiet. Peace and quiet. Not peace, general peace, but just like quiet. We will not have a crazy person who just drums up controversy and drama every single day, because if the Israelis enjoy the quiet and are happy, they are not voting for him. He knows that people are voting for him when they're shit scared, that the Iranians, the Arabs, and the left-wingers are out to kill them and to get them, to annihilate us all. So this is the psychological state that he needs to bring the Israeli people to be constantly scared. So every single day he comes up with some fabricated stories. So he was pushing this camera law that would have had like a brown shirt militia, personal private militia of the Likud to disrupt elections in polling stations in whatever left-wing and Arab centers. This would have been just horrible. I would just in my eyes I saw the destruction of the state of Israel. Fortunately, thank you God, he wasn't able to pass this law in this current parliament. So the very same day he said, I have a dramatic announcement that is related to national security. The very same day that he couldn't pass his camera law that got everybody spooked. Instead of talking about the corruption charges that he faces and the corruption charge that he has yet to face, where he enriched his cousins and allegedly himself by brokering a nuclear submarine deal to Egypt. In order to not talk about that, I have a dramatic announcement. We uncovered a nuclear site in Iran, blah, 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 a new nuclear site, blah, 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 blah. That didn't take off. Nobody cared. Everybody's like, okay, whatever. The next day, I have a dramatic announcement. Everybody was waiting for a dramatic announcement for an hour and a half. His rivals tried to block it. Then he said, no, this is not going to be propaganda. Because it's against the law to use your office of the prime ministership for blatant propaganda. You have to talk about matters of state and stuff. So, no, this is matters of state. Went on stage. If you vote for me, if you elect me, I will annex parts of the West Bank, the eastern Jordan River. I will annex that part. He had a logo of his party and a vote for his party like at the corner of the screen. For like half a day, everybody was, what is going to be this dramatic announcement? Everybody was tense. I found myself constantly checking what's going to be the dramatic announcement. I'm going to annex parts of the West Bank. It didn't land. Everybody forgot about it. And then he went on to speak somewhere in the south of Israel. And while he was speaking, there was an alarm because the Islamic Jihad, apparently, they have Facebook technology. And they saw that he said in his Facebook page that he's headed to the south. And he said when and where. And he said, let's see if... and then they were like, he's coming here. Okay, let's shoot missiles at the city where he's in. So while he was... giving a speech live, there was an alarm and he was ushered by Israeli Secret Service members off stage while hundreds of people were just left there. That was a very, very, very bad look. The opposition pounced on him and then he said, I wonder, and then he spun that again. I wonder who was happier to see me ushered away off stage, the terrorists or my political rivals, who are all ex-generals. So in the current crazy Israeli right wing, 3 ex-heads of the Israeli army, heads of the military, not just a general, like the chief of staff, 3 former chief of staff are in some way or another in cahoots with our enemies to destroy our country. So now... let's get to the not really realistic best case scenario. People are tired of Bibi. His get out the vote efforts fall short. The Israeli Arabs surprise us all with high turnout. Because of all these shenanigans, they realize how important it is, what's at stake. The left wing, the Labour Party, which has remodeled itself as a socialist party with very few, with mainly a socialist party, has attracted prominent right winger to join this party. This will be the party that I'll be voting for on Tuesday. They surprise everybody in the polls and get a lot more seats than we thought. The KKK, Jewish Nazi Party, doesn't get the 4 seats minimum needed to get into parliament. And not only does Bibi not have his 61 votes that he needs, but his rivals, the Generals Party, can form a coalition with Lieberman right-wing racist anti-Bibi party, the Labour Party. It's very hard to make this work in terms of math. I don't know how this is plausible. Honestly, maybe one of the ultra-Orthodox party want to join in. maybe the left-wing Liberal Party, Meretz, now called Democratic Camp, maybe they also join, and we get 61 seats, and Bibi is a goner. Or the threat of the 61 seats gets Bibi's rivals and enemies within the Likud to shiv him in the back. They gain the courage. They oust him out of the Likud. They hold the primaries to see who will lead the Likud, and they form a united joint coalition. I don't know if it's worth hoping for that, honestly. This is the best case scenario. The possibility that the party that I'm voting for, Labour, this is only the second time in my life that I'm voting for Labour, and because of the head of the Labour, Amir Peretz, I really loved him in the past. Now I like him, and the reason. So I was going to vote for the liberal left-wing party, but they added Ehud Barak, former prime minister, former minister of defense, horrible person. He's very anti-Bibi, but he's a horrible person. So that kind of turned me off. I don't know. And then I learned, anecdotally, that some people that I know in the neighborhood where I buy my groceries, it's a Likud family. The head of the family, he has Bibi's picture in his living room. His sons say that he would rather that his sons would go to prison rather than Bibi would go to prison. There's not one thing that Bibi will say and do that he will not support. So I have been having friendly-ish arguments and discussions with them for years, since I've been living here in this neighborhood for 7 years. Sometimes every single day, bickering, friendly/friendly-ish. For 2 years, I've stopped talking with the father because I don't like these conversations anymore. But I've been bickering and arguing with his sons, always defending Bibi in some way or another. Both of them are going to vote for Labour because of this prominent right-winger, socialist right-winger that they added. And it's just the thought that these two people and what they represent for me, that after all these arguments, that we're voting for the same party, just blew my mind. I was like, this could be a new dawn. I don't know. So it's not 100% rational, but I have three choices. Either the left-wing Liberal Party or Labour's union with the socialist right-wing party, but essentially pro-peace. Obviously, the head of Labour is very, very pro-peace also. Or the joint list of the Arab parties, which includes Arab left-wingers and Arab right-wingers and Arab religious Islamists in some way. I voted for the Arab left-wingers. It's a joint with also a few Jewish politicians, I think 3 times already. But I don't like this joint list because I don't like to give my vote to Arab nationalists who are pro-conflict. But I understand people who do vote for them because you're not voting for them to create a coalition. It's like an anti-racism vote, and you're voting for a group that you know will never, ever support Bibi no matter what. So there are these 3 options. Either of these 3 are fine. I decided to go to this socialist combination. But there is a chance that they not get in. Also, there's a chance that the liberal left-wing party doesn't get in the parliament. That's like the worst case scenario, where one or both of the Jewish left-wing parties do not get into parliament. And yep, man, I'm ending this on a very, very negative note and pessimistic note, because if that happens, then we are truly fucked. Then we are beyond fucked. There will be nobody to stop anything from deteriorating here. This would be like the most horrible thing in the world. This would be like not thinking about plan B, but actually planning plan B, like, and having serious, tangible, concrete conversations with my family on where can we go and continue our lives. Be it in Europe, I have a European passport, my daughter and my ex-wife, they have an American passport. I have friends in Europe. Rutger, I hope your couch can fit us all. And I have friends in the US also where we can crash. So whatever. Okay. Let's hope this doesn't happen. The elections is on Tuesday, which when you're listening to it is probably either tomorrow or today. I'm gonna post another one summing it all up on Thursday. Let's hope that none of the worst case scenarios come to life. Cross your fingers. Let's hope there's like a medium case scenario. And I want to thank you not only for tuning in, but for supporting the work that we do here. We're working very, very hard to produce top-notch content. And we're not getting a lot of views on YouTube because most of our audience is still the Game of Thrones audience, and now we're posting all kinds of stuff, so we're not getting a lot of traction, but I appreciate, so I doubly and triply appreciate your continued support until I manage to grow our audience with new kinds of people who are not mostly or only solely interested in the Game of Thrones, but in all interesting stories and how to look at them from a scientific, psychological, philosophical, whatever-ish point of view. So thank you very much. Deeply appreciate it. So fingers crossed, everybody. Bye-bye.